who now lives in a petting zoo. He has a popular series called Food Bar, which returns to Netflix for season 2 tomorrow. Please welcome Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger není jenom legenda. Je živoucím důkazem toho, že velikost se dá vybudovat z bolesti disciplíny a neotřesitelné vize. Nenarodil se do privilegií, ale do utrpení a temnoty. A přesto se zvedl jako bouře, proměnil své tělo v disciplínu, svou vůli v ocel a svůj osud v historii. Od globálních pódií Mr. Olympia až po síně moci, od neúnavné zuřivosti Terminátora až po klidnou vystupování státníka, Arnold nesl na svých bedrech tíhu světa a nikdy ji nenechal spadnout. Nejenže změnil hru, přepsal definici síly, odvahy, vzdorování každému hlasu, který kdy řekl nemůžeš. Po celá desetiletí stál pevně jako symbol kontroly přesnosti a odolnosti tváří v tvář bolesti. A dnes s osobním jměním přesahujícím 1,2 miliardy dolarů a slávou dosahující výšin, na které svět může jen hledět, je krutá ironie v tomto. Žádná sláva, žádné bohatství nedokáže zastavit tichou bouři, která se blíží. Protože i ten největší hrdina musí jednoho dne klopítnout. A nyní, když opona věku těžne se valí brutální bouře, takovou, kterou žádný reflektor nezakryje a žádný sval neodolá. V 78 letech už Arnold nebojuje o tituly ani o potlesk. Čeká ho kapitola, která je náročnější než jakákoliv role, kterou kdy hrál. Než začneme, nezapomeňte dát like jako gesto síly a úcty k této mimořádné legendě. Bouře ale pro Arnolda Schwarzeneggera nejsou ničím novým. Dlouho před kamerami šampionáty a miliardovým jměním žil jeden kluk. Chlapec, který znal chuť studených podlah, zvuk ticha a tíhu neviditelnosti. Arnold se narodil 30 července 1947 v malé rakouské vesnici Tal a přišel do světa stále poznamenaného stíny války. Rakousko se sice obnovuje, ale jizvy přetrvávají. V jeho ulicích, v jeho domovech a v srdcích jeho obyvatel. Jeho rodina žila ve skromném domě bez moderního komfortu, kde byly zimy kruté a teplo bylo něco, co si člověk vysloužil, ne daroval. Jeho otec Gustav, policista, formovaný těžkou minulostí, vládl domácnosti s přísnou disciplínou. Chvála byla vzácná náklonnost ještě vzácnější. Arnold později vzpomínal, že se nebál trestu, ale neviditelnosti. Tiché bolesti z pocitu, že je ve vlastním domě přehlížen. Zlatým dítětem byl jeho starší bratr Meinhard, který si zdálo se bez námahy získával otcovo uznání. Arnold byl naopak tichý, ostražitý, odhodlaný, ale zřídka si ho někdo všímal. Tato nerovnováha v něm zasadila prudkou touhu dokázat si svou hodnotu. Věděl jsem, že láska se u nás doma nerozdává, říkal o roky později. Člověk si ji musí zasloužit a i tak ji nemusí dostat. To uvědomění jeho odhodlání utvrdilo. Rozhodl se, že když ho nikdo nezvedne, zvedne se sám. Doslova. Problém byl v tom, že v Talu nebyla žádná posilovna, žádné nablízkané vybavení ani mentor, který by ho vedl. K dispozici byly jen úlomky kovu, kusy dřeva a studený sklep, který voněl hlínou a rzí. V tomto temném prostoru osvětleném jedinou žárovkou Arnold začal formovat víc než jen svaly. Každá improvizovaná závaží, kterou zvedl, byla tichým prohlášením. Jsem tady, záleží na mě. Cinknutí kovu se stalo jeho odpovědí na ticho nahoře. Zatímco si ostatní kluci hráli venku nebo lenošili letní odpoledne, Arnold byl v podzemí, pot mu kapal na beton a představoval si život daleko za hranicemi své vesnice. Na stěny svého pokoje si lepil výstřižky z časopisů s kulturisty titány, kteří pro něj nebyli jen silní, ale i svobodní. Osvobozen od malosti, od studu, od toho, aby byl neviditelný. Studoval jejich pózy, jako by to byly posvátné texty, učil se tvary a linie lidské postavy ne pro marnivost, ale pro únik. Síla, jak si později uvědomil, nespočívala v tom vypadat mocně. Šlo o přežití. V těch letech přežití znamenalo vybudovat si tělo a vůli tak silnou, že ho nic ani chudoba, ani izolace, ani pochybnosti nemohli zastavit. V jeho raném dospívání na konci 50 let se Arnoldův svět začal rozšiřovat. Objevil malou posilovnu v Grázu několik kilometrů daleko a jezdil na kole celé hodiny, jen aby tam mohl trénovat. Cesta byla vyčerpávající, stoupání příjemný vítr a návrat domů dlouho po setmění. Ale výzvu si užíval. Každý šlápnutí na pedál byl krokem od života, který nechtěl, a krokem blíž k životu, který si představoval. Jeho přátelé si mysleli, že je posedlý. Měli pravdu. Arnold se nehonil za koníčkem. Honil se za svobodou. V pozdějších rozhovorech o té době hovořil bez hořkosti, ale s jasností. V té vesnici jsem nikdy neviděl budoucnost, řekl. Musel jsem si ji vytvořit. A tak se v tavicím kotli chladného rakouského sklepa a na silnicích vedoucích do Grázu zrodil šampion. Nepotleskem, neútěchou, ale tichou vzpourou chlapce, který odmítal zůstat malý. Ty rané roky tvrdé a neúprosné mu dali víc než jen svaly. Dali mu disciplínu, vizi a neotřesitelnou víru, že dokáže překonat jakoukoliv překážku. Dlouho předtím, než svět znal jeho jméno, si Arnold Schwarzenegger budoval tu jedinou věc, která ho navždy definovala. Sílu stoupat znovu a znovu, bez ohledu na to, jak těžká je tíha. Když Arnold Schwarzenegger v roce 1968 ve věku pouhých 21 let vystoupil z letadla Amerika, nebyla zlatou zemí příležitostí, kterou si představoval. Bylo to bojiště, které musel překonat sám. Dorazil s kufrem plným oblečení hrstí dolarů a snem, který byl příliš těžký na tenkou peněženku v jeho kapse. Jeho rakouský přízvuk se ovíjel kolem každého slova jako řetěz a proměňoval jednoduché rozhovory ve vyčerpávající maratony. Lidé se zdvořile usmívali, když mluvil, ale mnozí mu prostě nerozuměli. I didn't know the words Arnold would later recall, so I spoke with my actions. Those actions meant work hard, unglamorous bone-deep work. By day he hauled bricks and swung hammers on construction sites under the California sun, muscles burning as he saved every dollar. By night he trained in cramped, dimly lit gyms that smelled of iron and ambition, sculpting a body he was certain the world could not ignore. He rented small shared rooms, just a bed, a flickering lamp, and a place to hang his dream. Some nights he would lie awake staring at a cracked ceiling, listening to the hum of Los Angeles traffic, and wonder if he had made the greatest mistake of his life. In those years, bodybuilding in America was still a niche obsession, far from the celebrated sport it would later become. Outside a tight circle of devotees, most saw it as a strange sideshow. To them, Arnold was just another over-muscled foreigner chasing an impossible fantasy. He knew there was only one way to change their minds: win and keep winning until they could no longer dismiss him. In jedna tisíc 970 at just 23, he became the youngest man ever to win Mr. Olympia, but each title came with suffocating pressure. If I lost, he said I wasn't just losing a trophy, I was losing my place in this country. Every contest was a fight for survival, for identity, for the right to stay. The loneliness was sharper than the physical strain. Thousands of miles from Thal, Austria, he longed for his mother's cooking, the familiar hills of his hometown, even the stern voice of his father. But there were no arms to fall into, here no family to share the weight. America was loud, fast, and unyielding. His closest companions were in the gym, men who understood the language of pain and progress. Yet, when the weights stopped clanging and the lights went out, the silence returned. His body, too, exacted a price. In his relentless drive to grow stronger, he pushed past limits until they pushed back. Torn muscles, aching joints, deep bruises. They were not badges of glory, but warnings. Still, he pressed on. Pain became his currency, traded daily for a shot at the future he envisioned. He wrapped his knees, iced his elbows, and lifted anyway. The bridge back to Austria had been burned the moment he left. There was no retreat. Through it all, he clung to a singular vision, a day when no one could overlook him, when his name would be etched not only into bodybuilding history, but into the culture itself. Every bead of sweat, every dollar saved, every night spent alone was a brick in the monument he was building to himself. Looking back decades later, he said, I saw myself where I wanted to be, not where I was. That unshakable vision and the pain he accepted as its price turned a stranger in a strange land into a man the whole world would one day know. By the early jedna 1970, Arnold Schwarzenegger was no longer the outsider, sleeping in a cramped room. He was the face of a sport. In jedna 1970, at just 23, he claimed his first Mr. Olympia title, and by jedna 1975, he had already stood atop the podium 6 times. The 7th would come in jedna 1980, sealing his place as a legend. But behind the dazzling trophies was a truth few could see. Each victory brought not relief, but a heavier burden. The pressure to maintain a body sculpted to near mythical proportions meant training through pain-hiding injuries and living on a razor's edge between triumph and breakdown. Torn tendons, aching joints, and the constant fear that one wrong move could end it all haunted him like shadows under the spotlight. Winning makes you a target, he would say years later. Everyone watches waiting for the day you slip. Hollywood soon came calling, and in 1982, Conan the Barbarian turned him from a sports icon into a rising movie star. Yet even here, the climb was uphill. Studio executives laughed at his thick accent, called his name too long, too foreign, too impossible for a marquee. Roles were scarce and rejection was constant. But Arnold, forged in the grind of bodybuilding, refused to yield. He studied acting, worked on his delivery, and when 1984, The Terminator hit theaters, the same accent they once mocked became a cinematic trademark. His line, "I'll be back," echoed around the world. Fame, however, has its own price. The schedules were merciless months spent on location, far from home, from family, from anything familiar. The distance carved quiet spaces in his life that no applause could fill. He had wealth, influence, and recognition beyond his wildest dreams. Yet some nights alone in hotel rooms, he felt the same silence he had known as a young man in Los Angeles. And fame made every stumble louder. A movie that underperformed. A competition not won, even a personal misstep. Each one magnified because he wasn't just Arnold, he was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Success had built him a throne, but it also made him a prisoner of expectation. The same spotlight that lit his path could just as easily expose his flaws. Then came the transitions that would test him in ways neither iron nor cameras ever had. Retiring from competition to focus solely on acting. Leaving behind the certainty of movie stardom to enter the unpredictable arena of politics in the early 1990s. Each move drew critics who questioned his motives, his abilities, his right to even try. Every choice carried the risk of erasing the image he had spent decades building. Yet he embraced the risk, knowing that stagnation was a quieter kind of death. If you don't keep moving forward, he once said, you start moving backward. From the outside, it was all glory. The 7 Olympia crowns, the box office triumphs, the governorship. But those who looked closer could see the truth. Na vrcholu je vzduch řídký, noci dlouhé a muž nahoře je v mnoha ohledech stále sám. Svou říši vybudoval s železnou odvahou, disciplínou a vůlí dostatečně ostrou na to, aby dokázal prorazit nemožné. Po celá desetiletí bylo tělo Arnolda Schwarzeneggera jeho pevností. Neotřesitelný pod světly Mr. Olympia, neústupný pod drtivými programy Hollywoodu, nezlomný v nelítostném divadle politiky. Neslo ho napříč kontinenty do historických knih a skrze bouře, které by pohltily i méně cenné muže. Ale v roce 1997, v 50 letech, se tato pevnost zhroutila. Nad ním svítila zářivka. Sterilní studená chuť antiseptika mu naplnila plíce. Někde v dálce pulzoval monitor srdeční činnosti, rytmem, který už nebyl zcela jeho vlastní. Na nemocniční posteli v Los Angeles nebyl terminátorem ani budoucím guvernérem, ani 7násobným držitelem ceny Mr. C. Olympia, jehož tělo bylo živoucím pomníkem lidské vůle. Byl to muž zbavený své nejkřehčí pravdy, chystající se nechat chirurgy proříznout si hrudník a nahradit mu aortální chlopeň, se kterou se narodil a kterou půl století skrýval. Nebyla to hrdost, co ho drželo v tichu, byl to strach. Strach, že svět uvidí, co celý život předbíhal. Že i ten nejsilnější muž v místnosti může být zranitelný. Své matce v Rakousku to neřekl, stárla. Její ruce už byly poznamenány časem a on odmítal vložit na její ramena další tíhu. Zavolám jí, až to skončí, řekl si, ale v roce 1999 byla pryč. Žádný telefonát, žádné s Bohem. Byl na place, když přišla ta zpráva, kamery běžely svaly vytesané z desetiletí války, s gravitací, uvnitř se slunce v něm roztříštilo na kousky. Jizva na jeho hrudi vybledla. Jizva v jeho srdci se nikdy nezavřela. A tak dělal to, co dělal vždycky. Neustále se hýbal. Během první dekády 21 století se konaly filmové premiéry, kde blesky explodovaly jako dělostřelectvo politické shromáždění, kde dav řval jeho jméno a projevy, které se ozývaly velkými sály. Stroj pro svět stále vypadal bezchybně, ale v tichých chvílích, když světla zhasla a dveře se zavřely, mu srdce šeptalo. Věděl, že se to vrátí. V březnu 2018 v 70 letech se tak stalo. Co měla být rutinní výměna katetrizační chlopně, se bez varování rozpadlo v nouzovou operaci na otevřeném srdci. Udělali jsme chybu, řekli mu chirurgové, když se probudil. Zmatený, zdrženlivý, neschopný mluvit skrz hadičku v krku pro muže, jehož celý život byl postaven na kontrole. Tohle bylo jeho soukromé peklo. Záblesky myšlenek prořezávaly mlhu jako blesky. His children will. They remember me as strong, or will they remember this? Maria, does she still care? The press, what will they write? And always the image of his mother gone without a goodbye, is haunting him with the fear that he might leave his own children with the same wound. October 2020, 72, surgery number 3. By then, he no longer asked why me. There was no bargaining left, no denial, just a nod to the e-doctors. An unspoken acknowledgement that resistance was a useless weapon against time. Then came March 2024, 76 years old, still lifting weights, still smiling for cameras, still speaking to crowds that hung on his every word. But deep inside, the rhythm that had carried him through every battle began to stumble. Arrhythmia, the doctor said. Scar tissue from decades of surgeries was scrambling the electrical signals of his heart. The solution? A pacemaker. For most, a lifeline. For Arnold, it felt like a verdict. The man who had once bent steel with his bare hands, who had crushed records and stood alone at the summit of two worlds, would now live because a device told his heart when to beat. He looked at the doctor and whispered almost to himself, I used to be the machine. Now, I need one inside me. Days later, he went public through his podcast, Arnold's Pump Club. On the surface, it was about raising awareness, telling the world that even giants can fall, but those who listened closely could hear something heavier than words. The fatigue of a warrior who has counted too many scars to remember, and the quiet surrender that comes when you have fought every battle and know there are more ahead. Less than a week after surgery, he stood at an environmental summit. Lights flashed like 1,000 tiny suns. Applause thundered like distant surf. He smiled the same smile that had charmed millions for decades, but beneath the tailored suit was a fresh line of stitches, a hidden pacemaker, and a man who now measured every handshake, every sunrise, every speech against the relentless ticking inside his chest. He had built a life on proving he was stronger than pain, stronger than doubt, stronger than failure itself. Now, each morning, his first act was to press his palm to his chest, not to test the hardness of muscle, but to feel the quiet mechanical pulse that kept him here. Not because he had conquered death, but because he had finally learned to hear it. This is the new Arnold, not the unbreakable icon, not the invincible machine. Just a man with scars, some carved into flesh, others buried where no one can see, still pushing forward, even as the silence follows just one step behind. Sometimes the pain that cuts the deepest doesn't come from a surgeon's scalpel or the terror of a failing heartbeat. It comes from the slow, silent theft of a loved one's mind, from watching the person you once knew slip away while their body still stands before you. The world called Arnold Schwarzenegger a titan of strength, a force carved from iron and willpower, a man who had lifted himself from cold gym floors to the highest podiums of power. But there was no weight he could lift to stop the moment he looked into his father's eyes and realized the man he loved was already gone. It began years earlier in the early 2010s, when Sergeant Shriver, the proud American diplomat, co-founder of the Peace Corps, husband to Eunice Kennedy, Shriver and the man who had shaped Arnold's moral compass and political dreams started showing small cracks in the armor. At first, they were almost harmless. Forgotten keys, a repeated story told as if it were new, a name skipped over in the middle of a sentence. Arnold noticed and his chest tightened because he had seen these signs before. An uncle in Austria who had faded into dementia the same way. He knew what was coming, and it was worse than any physical injury he had ever faced. As the months turned into years, the erosion quickened. The man who had once stood before presidents, spoken to nations, and inspired millions was now a fragile figure moving through rooms like a ghost in his own life. Then came the day that would carve a scar in Arnold's memory forever. It was a quiet afternoon visit. The sun fell in soft light across the room. Arnold leaned in to speak, expecting a smile, a spark of recognition. Instead, Sergeant looked at him with a gaze that was neither confused nor frustrated, only vacant. "Who are you?" he asked, the words falling with the weight of 1,000 heartbreaks. Arnold's throat closed. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in that instant, his father, the man who had taught him how to knot a tie, how to speak with dignity, how to believe that public service could be a noble calling, was gone, not dead gone. And there is no grief sharper, no wound more bitter than mourning someone who is still alive. Arnold would later admit in rare moments of vulnerability that this cut deeper than any of his surgeries, deeper than heartbreak, deeper even than his most public failures, because it forced him to face a truth that haunted him long after the funeral. What if one day I forget who I am too? Watching Sergeant fade wasn't just emotional agony. It was a cruel mirror. Every misplaced word, every lost moment, every blank stare became a whisper in Arnold's mind that neither muscle nor money nor medals could guard him from the slow, merciless erosion of memory. It haunted him in hotel rooms, after speeches in the silence between film takes in the stillness of dawn, before the world knew he was awake. In interviews, he kept his composure, saying all the right things, praising his father's legacy, talking about hope, promising to fight for awareness. But behind closed doors, his fear became a discipline. He overhauled his diet, added supplements, devoured research, began daily mental exercises not to live longer, but to remember longer, because it wasn't death that terrified him. It was the thought of disappearing while still breathing. As the disease stole more of Sergeant Arnold's own reflection began to shift, he started to see time not as a mountain to conquer, but as a force to negotiate with a rival. You couldn't defeat, only delay. His workouts became less about sculpting bulk and more about building longevity. His speeches turned from ambition toward legacy, each word chosen as if it might be the last the world remembered him by. When Sergeant passed in 2001, Arnold stood at the podium to deliver the eulogy. He was not the movie star, not the former governor, not the icon the cameras adored. He was a son, broken, grieving, and afraid. The cameras captured the public moment, the measured words, the strength in his voice, but they did not capture the private moment afterward. When Arnold sat alone in the back of the hall, staring at the empty chair where his father had once sat tall and proud, he whispered something into the stillness too low for anyone to hear. Maybe it was a promise. Maybe it was a prayer that he would not let the same silent thief take him without a fight, that when his own time came, the world would remember him before it forgot his name. He had endured the silent agony of watching someone he loved fade into the shadows of memory. But nothing in that long history of heartbreak could prepare him for the storm he would bring upon himself, a storm born not of fate, but of his own choices. This was not an accident. It was the single mistake that would shatter the image he had built over decades, tear apart the trust of the people who mattered most, and leave a scar that no time or triumph could erase. For years, Arnold Schwarzenegger carried the crushing weight of a truth he could never speak aloud. He had fathered a child with Mildred Boehner, the family's longtime housekeeper, a woman who had been part of their home for over 20 years, trusted in the smallest moments of their daily lives. In jedna, Tisis, David set, Davidisat sedum. Mildred gave birth to Joseph Arnold's son. At almost the same time, Maria Shriver, his wife of more than a decade, gave birth to their youngest, Christopher. Two boys born within weeks of each other, growing up under the same roof, one openly acknowledged the other, hidden in plain sight. For over a decade, the secret lived within the walls of their home, like a shadow that refused to leave. As Joseph grew, the resemblance to Arnold became harder to ignore. Široká ramena, držení těla, nezaměnitelná jiskra v jeho očích. Maria si podobností všimla vícekrát, ale láska a důvěra ji zaslepily před tím, čemu její srdce nechtělo věřit. Stála po Arnoldově boku během každé jeho proměny, neúprosné dřiny. Kulturistiky, zkoumání Hollywoodu, nelítostných bitev politického života, obětovala svou vlastní kariéru a soukromí, aby mohla vychovat 4 děti pod neúprosným světlem reflektorů. Byla jeho partnerkou v každé válce, ale ve válce nevěděla, že bojuje, a nepřítel už byl uvnitř brán. V roce 2011 se pravda už nemohla skrývat. Maria se postavila Mildred a odpověď, kterou dostala, jí zlomila svět. Arnold se bez odporu přiznal, slova se mu valila do hrudi jako kameny, které mu léta uvízly v hrudi. Žádná složitá vysvětlení, žádné zoufalé lži, jen syrové přiznání zrady, kterou už nikdy nedokáže vzít zpět. Pro Marii to bylo víc než jen nevěra. Byla to hluboká trhlina v důvěře veřejné ponížení a uvědomění si, že život, který tak zuřivě bránila, nebyl takový, jaký si myslela. Tiše se odstěhovala z jejich domova. Během několika dní se o tom dozvěděl tisk a svět se zhroutil. Titulky křičely, komentátoři rozebírali každý detail. Cizinci soudili, ale pod tím hlukem se skrývala skutečná zkáza. 4 děti Catherine, Kristina, Patrick a Christopher zaskočení touto zprávou a dospívající chlapec Joseph náhle vyvrženi ze stínů do bouře soudů, o kterou si nikdy nepřál. Arnold nyní zbaven sebeovládání udělal, co mohl. Veřejně Josefa uznal, nabídl mu podporu a snažil se s ním vybudovat vztah. Ale i když chlapec přijal své místo, vtájde Arnoldův život, roky mlčení už zanechali svou stopu. Mariino vzácné veřejné prohlášení mělo půvab, který mnohé ohromil. Je to bolestivé a srdcervoucí, ale je to také součást života. V těchto slovech byla tichá důstojnost ženy hluboce zraněné, ale nechtějící nechat se ovlivnit hořkostí. Pro Arnolda byl stud dusivý. V jeho očích to nebyl skandál. Byl to okamžik, kdy přestal být mužem, na kterého se jeho žena mohla spolehnout. Mužem, kterému jeho děti mohly plně důvěřovat. Vybudoval si impérium na disciplíně šarmu a precizní kontrole. Ale tato chyba to všechno zbavila a odhalila pravdu mnohem nepříjemnější než selhání, že i on sám by mohl zničit právě to, co si nejvíce vážil. Důsledky zasáhly hlouběji než kariéru nebo pověst. Byli duchovní a otřásli základy toho, kým věřil, že je. O několik let později v jednom rozhovoru s neochvějnou upřímností řekl, že nikdo jiný za to nemůže. Způsobil jsem to. Zranil jsem člověka, kterého jsem nejvíc miloval, a tu hanbu si ponesu do konce života. And he meant it because behind the muscles, the films, the speeches and the accolades stood a man who could never unsee the pain in Maria's eyes. Never forget the moment trust died. Never fully bridge the distance in his children's hearts. No Hollywood redemption arc could rewrite this chapter. Some mistakes do not vanish. They live with you quietly, relentlessly every single day. He did not stand before cameras to plead for public forgiveness, nor did he step onto talk show stages to explain himself or twist the truth into something easier to accept. Arnold Schwarzenegger chose silence not as an escape, but as a deliberate act of responsibility, a decision to bear the weight of his actions without spectacle. When the truth erupted in 2011 and shattered the foundation of his family, he stepped away from the glare of the spotlight, retreating not in fear, but in acknowledgement that some wounds cannot be healed with words alone. In a rare moment of openness, he confessed to a close confidant there's no one else to blame. I did this, and I will carry it for the rest of my life. This was not a crafted press release or a line meant for headlines. It was the unfiltered voice of a man stripped bare, facing the reality of what he had lost. Maria Shriver, the woman who had shared decades of triumphs and trials with him, moved forward with grace and dignified silence, choosing the path of healing rather than public confrontation. Their children, though shaken by the storm, were given the privacy and protection they needed to process the pain in their own time. And Arnold remained present not in the grand arenas where he had once thrived, but in the quiet behind the scenes, where the painstaking work of redemption truly begins. He never turned away from Joseph, the son whose existence had brought the hidden truth into the light. Instead, he began to build a connection, brick by brick, not out of obligation, but out of recognition of responsibility of shared humanity, and of the undeniable bond that had always been there in the boy's eyes and posture. They found common ground in the discipline of training, in the shared language of effort and perseverance, and in the unspoken understanding that while neither could rewrite the beginning of their story, they could choose how the chapters ahead would be written. Arnold stayed equally committed to his 4 other children, Catherine, Christina, Patrick, and Christopher. He did not push for immediate forgiveness, nor did he attempt to erase the fracture with grand gestures. Instead, he chose to show up quietly, consistently, without the flash of publicity. Birthdays, graduations, simple family dinners. Each moment a quiet testament to the truth that rebuilding trust is not a single act, but a lifelong commitment. Profesionálně se vrátil do světa filmu, ale touha po slávě, která ho kdysi hnala, polevila. Jeho vystupování bylo umírněnější rolí méně. Jeho zaměření se přesunulo k cílům, které odrážely muže, kterým se snažil stát. Prosazoval iniciativy v oblasti změny klimatu, podporoval veterány, propagoval fyzické zdraví a intenzivně investoval do vzdělávání mládeže. Financoval mimoškolní programy v znevýhodněných komunitách, budoval venkovní fitness parky, které inspirovaly ke zdravému životnímu stylu a štědře přispíval na výzkum Alzheimerovy choroby. Poctu Mariině, otci seržantu Shriverovi, jehož odkaz nadále ctít. Tyto činy nebyly určeny pro kamery a přesně o to šlo. Pro Arnolda vykoupení nikdy neznamenalo znovu získat obdiv veřejnosti. Šlo o to den za dnem stát se lepším člověkem v očích těch, kterým nejvíce ublížil. V tichu svého domova občas vyndával staré fotografie, obrazy z doby před zlomeninou, kdy se člověk usmíval a atmosféra kolem rodiny se zdála celistvá. Zřídka kdy při pohledu na ně promluvil, ale ti, kteří ho dobře znali, chápali, že jeho mlčení má větší váhu, větší zármutek než jakákoliv omluva. Jednou příteli řekl: postavil jsem si život na disciplíně, ale tohle bylo jediné místo, kde jsem ji ztratil a stálo mě to všechno. V následujících letech se už nikdy znovu neoženil. Ačkoliv jeho jméno bylo občas spojováno s jeho společníky, Arnold už nikdy nestál před oltářem, aby složil sliby. Někteří říkali, že to byla věrnost minulosti, jiní věřili, že to byla jeho vlastní forma pokání. Možná hluboko uvnitř to bylo jeho nevyslovené uznání, že kdysi vlastnil něco mimořádného a pak se toho vzdal. Tato kapitola neměla žádné drtivé zakončení, žádný mediálně vytvořený oblouk vykoupení. Pouze muž po 70, který i nadále stojí při svých dětech, vede další generaci, mentoruje mladé lidi ze všech společenských vrstev a nese jizvu ne takovou, která s časem vybledne, ale takovou, která zůstává jako neustálá připomínka lekcí naučených bolestí. Pro Arnolda Schwarzeneggera se tato jizva stala zároveň jeho břemenem i kompasem. Tichá trvalá stopa, která ho naučila o síle víc než jakýkoliv šampionát, filmová role nebo politické vítězství. V 78 letech už Arnold Schwarzenegger není nezničitelnou postavou, která se na plátně prodírá ohnivými koulemi nebo stojí pod oslepujícími světly Olympie, ale ocel v jeho vůli zůstává nyní zušlechtěná jizvami, klidnějšími rány a ostřejším chápáním času. Most days still begin before sunrise inside his Brentwood, Los Angeles estate, a Mediterranean villa he purchased in 2002 for about $4,8 million now, valued between $2 to $3 million, spread across 6 lush acres with a 14,500 square foot T-shaped layout for privacy, floor to ceiling, glass opening to the Pacific and Catalina. On clear days, 2 elevators dedicated to the guest wing for family weekends, dual kitchens, a warm, intimate one for daily life, and a sleek, entertaining kitchen opening to an outdoor BBQ and pizza station, a private theater, a wine cellar with a soda bar, a game and billiards lounge, a rare flat lawn, and a resort-style pool flanked by cabanas terraces, and an outdoor kitchen with smoker and stone oven. In the garage and hangar of his life, the artifacts speak as loudly as any role. A real M47 patent tank from his Austrian military service, the AM General Hummer H, Jaden that ignited a civilian craze, a custom electric converted. H, Jaden that bows to the future, a modern Hummer EV, a BMW E-Sedan X Drive. Shedesat, a Chevrolet Suburban for low-key family logistics, and Excalibur series. Diva Phaeton for flamboyant nostalgia, a Porsche 911. Jedenast, turbo cabriolet for sunset glides. And as some profiles note, a Bugatti Veyron Grand Sport, alongside a bespoke electric G-Class developed with a European e-mobility partner. When business or family calls him far, he boards his Gulfstream 750 nautical miles of range, typically Dvanaxt, plus seats less, as a status symbol than as a way to own his minutes after decades of chasing them. Yet, the most valuable engine he tends each morning is the one in his chest. The rhythm is steady now, thanks to a 2024 pacemaker, but each beat carries the memory of the aortic valve replacement in 1997, the emergency open heart surgery in 2018, the third operation in 2020. He admits there were mornings post-surgery when opening his eyes felt like winning a lottery he hadn't bought a ticket for. The man who once measured himself in plates and reps now measures the discipline to stop before the pain starts. Training is precise, not punishing. The protein shakes have given way to plant-based meals rich in heart-friendly fats and greens. He meditates daily, and in short fitness clips aimed at men his age. He proves that discipline can outlast ego, even when muscle gives way to tendon and tendon to time. He never remarried after his 2011 split from Maria Shriver, still speaking of her with respect as the mother of his 4 children. For more than a decade, his partner has been Heather Milligan, a physical therapist. Their life together, quiet, steady, absent of red carpet performances. His children stand firmly on their own. Catherine brings her young children by letting him practice a gentler form of fatherhood. Patrick balances acting and entrepreneurship. Christina carves her own path away from the spotlight. Christopher lives grounded and steady. And Joseph, once the sun in the shadows, is now fully in the family circle. Their bond forged in iron-long talks and the mutual vow to build forward without rewriting the past. As for the money behind the myth, Forbes 9025 places his net worth at roughly 2 billion, the product not of chance, but of the same index card goals he wrote the day he landed in America in jedna 1968. The bricklaying business with Franco Colombo that thrived after the jedna 1971 San Fernando earthquake. Early mail order fitness ventures. The first apartment building at age 25 that opened the real estate floodgates. Planet Hollywood and its lessons. Oak Productions, publishing ventures. The Arnold Sports Festival launched in 1989, and in 2018 co-founding the latter supplement brand with LeBron James before selling it in 2020. He now chooses screen roles for meaning, not money. He pours time and capital into public fitness parks after school programs, veteran support, environmental advocacy, and Alzheimer's research in honor of Sergeant Shriver, whose decline still shapes Arnold's compass. There's no public will, but those close to him say his affairs are meticulously arranged. Another way of showing up for family. Age has carved lines into his face, slowed his stride, but his handshake is firm. His eyes still lit with the same spark that once propelled a young Austrian with nothing but a dream across an ocean. Strength he's learned is not in how hard you hit, but in how steadily you stand. At graduations on game sidelines, around dinner tables, without cameras on morning rides through Brentwood, where each turn feels like a promise kept. If the mansion is his fortress and the machines his battalions, then the lesson of his late 70s is this: redemption is not loud. Legacy is not a pose, and every quiet step forward counts, especially when the clock inside your chest reminds you exactly why you take it. In the end, Arnold Schwarzenegger's story is not merely about muscles, movies, or medals. It is the odyssey of a boy from Thol who once stared past the Austrian mountains and imagined a life far larger than the narrow one laid before him. It is the long road from unheated gyms and halting English to the soft light of a Los Angeles morning, where his grandchildren's laughter spills through the kitchen. It is the hard-earned wisdom gathered through victories, losses, and scars, both seen and unseen, that the strongest muscle any person can build is the one that keeps showing up. We celebrate him not because he never faltered, but because he chose to change. He traded the roar of the crowd for the steady hum of a bicycle wheel. At dawn, the clatter of iron plates for the quiet weight of a child's hand. He is proof that reinvention is not surrender, it is survival, and sometimes the bravest act a human being can make. Now, nearing Osmdesad, with a heart that has been opened and mended more than once, Arnold reminds us that life's truest victories are not captured in headlines or trophies. They are found in the moments no one applauds, in the forgiveness extended in the discipline, kept when no one sees, in the choice to keep moving, when stillness would be easier. If something in his journey speaks to you, let it linger. Share the part of his life that stays with you, not just because it honors him, but because someone else may need that spark. Strength is not measured by how hard you can strike, but by how deeply you can care, how steadfastly you can endure. We are not born legends, but like Arnold, we can build ourselves into one choice by choice, day by day.